Hi guys, welcome back to the DeFi series. In this video, we will talk about one of the most exciting aspects in the DeFi space, which is automated market makers, AMMs. We will see why AMMs exist in first place, like what's the problem that we have with the order book that used to work just perfectly fine in the past in the traditional finance space. We will see what AMMs are and how do they work. And we will also cover the different categories of AMMs that exist along with examples. So lots of interesting stuff is going to be covered today. Let's get started. Before diving into the definition of AMM, let's first understand why AMM was being discovered, why we needed to innovate AMM for the DeFi space. So let's go back and talk about the story. So, as all of you might be aware about order book, which is something that is being used in the centralized exchanges. So, order book is basically a list of orders from buyers and sellers. And what happens in order book is these buyers are being matched to sellers directly. These buyers and sellers specify the price at which they want to trade. So buyers place orders which are known as bids and seller place orders which are known as ask. These two participants are matched directly and that's how the order book work. And for this to work, there has to be sufficient liquidity all the time. Let's take an example. So if you see we are on Binance, which is one of the largest exchanges out there, and Binance uses order book. So whatever you see on the left hand side, this is the order book, and what you see in the middle is the current market price. So whatever you see in red about the market price, these are the people who wants to sell their assets. And in this case, since we are checking it for Ethereum, so these are the people who wants to sell their ethers, and this is the price at which they want to sell, and this is the amount they want to sell. And if you see at the bottom of the market price, the ones that you see in green, these are the orders which want to buy ethers, and they have specified the amount of ethers they want to buy. So here folks get a chance to provide the price at which they want to trade, and as soon as a buyer and a seller is matched, the order is fulfilled. So this is what happens in order book scenario. And as you might have guessed by now, let's say if you want to sell an asset or a cryptocurrency, then there needs to be some other person on the other side who is willing to buy your cryptocurrency at that specified price. So it is another important factor to consider in mind. So this is what order book is. Now let's switch back and understand. This is good. It is working in the centralized exchange space. Fine. But why can't we just use order book in the DeFi space? So there are a couple of reasons behind it. So the first reason is the liquidity challenge. So maintaining liquidity in this order books is difficult. Reason being, there could be a case where you have a pair of token which is not so popular, and if people are not providing enough liquidity for that token pair, then the trade cannot go on smoothly. So liquidity is one of the challenges in this space. And the second challenge, which is limited to the technical limitation of blockchain, specifically if we talk about Ethereum. So Ethereum is having high transaction cost, latency, and then the gas fees is also high. So because of these reason, order book is less practical to implement because every time somebody proposes a order or somebody is canceling a order, it needs to go into blockchain and a gas fees will be involved. And if it's slow, then the transactions cannot happen instantly. So this is the case with Ethereum, but there are faster and cheaper blockchains like Solana, Sui, Aptos, where order book is being used, and I'll come to it in some time. So let's see the third challenge, which is all the orders that you do are visible to everybody if it's being built on blockchain. And what would happen is, let's say you placed an order and it's not yet fulfilled. So you're at a risk of front running or MEV. What I mean by that is the miners that will order the transactions in the block, what they can do is they can change the order of the transaction to extract value out of it. So these are some of the challenges that exist. Now you might be wondering, okay, all of this is okay. These are the challenges that order book has, and AMMs are invented to replace order books so that trading can happen in a decentralized finance space without any central authority. Just want to highlight here. So order book is something like we discussed, it is challenging, but lots of layer twos, lots of faster chain are trying to come up with order book based decentralized exchanges. So Solana is trying to come up with one, and then there is a lot going in this space. You might have heard about this term called central limit order book, which is currently a hot topic in the market, and lots of clubs are coming up. So I just want to call few things here. So when it comes to order books, there are a couple of ways in which it could be implemented on blockchain. The first way is like the order book is on chain, and for that the blockchain needs to be very fast and gas needs to be very cheap. The second scenario could be the order book is off chain and all the settlements happen on chain. So let's say the order book is off chain. What I mean by that is the order matching is being happening, let's say on a layer 2 or on some server. And all these matching engine is something that is being done off chain and all the settlement happens on chain. But there's a risk involved here, right? Because if the order matching is done off chain and you're relying on a matching engine, in a way it's centralized. So it's not a very good design per se. And then there's a third approach that is being followed, which is the combination of AMMs and the order book. So you will see some of the blockchains trying to do combination of both AMMs and order book. So that's another way that the innovation is going on in this space. So just calling these things out which are happening in this space. So I hope with that you understand this part. So now let's understand what do we mean by AMMs. So AMM stands for Automated Market Makers, and you can simply think of it like a vending machine where you give it one asset like rupee and then you get to collect another asset, right? So AMMs allow us to trade cryptocurrencies in a decentralized manner by using something called a liquidity pool. And then there's a mathematical formula that helps in determining the price of the assets. So AMM is something that helps us to trade efficiently. And in this case, we are trading directly with the liquidity pool. There's not another person on the other side who wants to sell or buy their cryptocurrency. It's happening in a peer to contract manner, something that we have taken inspiration already from the lending space. There's a smart contract which is running, which is essentially a liquidity pool. And then whatever you want to buy or sell happens through that liquidity pool directly. There's no middleman involved, and all of the code is automated. So everything is being run by the smart contract. And since everything is automated, they're available 24/7 and the trade happens instantly. So that's what AMMs enable us to do. So now we understand what is order book and we also understand what are AMMs. Now let's see how AMM is different from a traditional order book. So in order book, as we have discussed, the orders are being matched. So what happens is the buyers and sellers are being matched directly. And in the case of automated market makers, the users are trading against the liquidity pool itself, which is nothing but a smart contract. And then in case of AMMs, what happens is users provide liquidity to the pool and then in return they earn rewards, which comes from the trading fees, which is proportional to how much liquidity they have supplied in a particular pool. And in case of order book, what happens is this liquidity comes from the market makers. The other important factor is how the prices are being determined. So in the case of order book, market makers are the ones that manipulate the price, right? And in the case of automated market makers, what happens is since we have the algorithm running, there's a mathematical equation which helps in determining the price. It's okay if you're not able to understand this fully. When we will cover the different types of AMMs, it will make more sense. And the last point, which is different, is as we saw in the ETH USD pair on Binance, like users have the power to say, I want to buy at this price, I want to sell at this price. So basically, this is called limit order, where users are defining their own price and they wait for the order to be fulfilled. Whereas in the automated market makers, user don't have that provision. Whatever happens in automated market makers is happening at the market price. So as a user, you just have to option either you trade at the market price or you don't trade. And this aspect of limit order is something that is being worked upon heavily in the blockchain space. And we will hopefully see some of the emerging clocks coming up in the market very soon. So these are the differentiators between AMMs and order book. Now let's understand how AMMs work. So as you can see, liquidity pool is at the center of AMMs. It's the heart of AMM. And what we mean by liquidity pool is basically a pool of tokens. At the back end, it's just a smart contract. So it's a pool which is having tokens, and there's a mathematical equation that governs the prices of these tokens. So everything is being done through algorithm. And if you might be wondering, okay, there is a smart contract which will have tokens, but who is going to deposit these tokens, right? Who is going to provide the liquidity? So if you see on the left-hand side, we have these folks called liquidity providers. These are the people who are interested in adding liquidity to the liquidity pools, and in return, they will get rewarded. They will get incentivized by the trading fees proportional to the liquidity that they had added to the liquidity pool. This is one of the ways in which, if you have cryptocurrency, you can earn incentives passively by just providing it to a liquidity pool. And there's one thing that you need to keep in mind being a liquidity provider, also known as LPs, which is there's this risk of impermanent loss. And what I mean by impermanent loss is, let's say you supply the tokens to a pool at a given rate X. So it could be a possibility that the value of these tokens could get reduced as the prices are being determined algorithmically, right? So this is one factor that you need to keep in mind when you're providing the liquidity to these pools. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there are traders, people like you and me who want to trade cryptocurrencies. And these AMMs are the ones that enable these traders to trade cryptocurrency instantly. And as we talked about, it's like a peer to contract trading that is happening. So the traders, they're interested in buying a token. Every time liquidity is added or a trade is done or liquidity is removed, the mathematical equation needs to be satisfied. So let's say for this example, this liquidity pool is having two tokens, token A and B, and it's governed by some mathematical equation. So if an actor wants to buy token A, he will need to trade token B in return so that he can get token A. Make sure that the mathematical equation is fulfilled. And so you have these traders, you have this liquidity providers, and then in the center you have the liquidity pool. And that's how AMM works. I hope it all makes sense. Now let's look into the different categories of AMMs that exist. So we have this upper umbrella called the constant function market maker. As the name suggests, it's the process of market making, basically determining the prices of tokens in a liquidity pool by ensuring that a function remains constant throughout. So it will be of this form. There will be a function and it will be always equal to a constant k. Now, let's talk about the different types of AMMs that exist under this. The most popular type of AMM is the constant product market maker called CPMM. what happens in this is the mathematical equation that needs to be satisfied to determine the price of assets. So x into y equal to k, where x represents the amount of token x, y represents the amount of token y, and k is the constant. And this constant product market maker is applicable just for two assets, as you might have guessed, token X and token Y. And this ensures that both of the assets are having 50:50 ratio. Let's see what constant product market maker is with the help of an example. So let's say we have a liquidity pool which consists of ETH and maker. And to start with, let's say we have 10 ETH in the pool and 3000 maker. So if we calculate the constant k as per this formula, which is x into y equal to k. So if we calculate this mathematical equation, the quantity of token A, which is ETH, is 10. The quantity of token B, which is maker in this case, is 3000. So we get x into y, which is 10 into 3000 is equal to 30,000. And this becomes the constant. So throughout the trading process, throughout the liquidity provision process, the K will has to remain 30,000. So let's see what happens when a user wants to buy, let's say 2 ETH. So in case a user wants to buy 2 ETH, the user needs to trade some MKR, some maker token, and let's see how much that token will be. So as we know, we initially started with this formula. We will be left with 10 minus 2 multiplied by 3000 plus dy, which is something which needs to be added to y, equal to 30,000. So what we get is 8 multiplied by 3000 plus y equal to 30,000. And now multiplying this whole equation by 8, we get 3000 plus y equal to 30,000 divided by 8, which is 3750. And if we calculate the value of y, we will get 3750 minus 3000, which is 750. So when I want to buy 2 ETH from this pool using the constant product market maker, what it means is I need to basically supply 750 maker into the pool. And if you calculate the product, remember the product needs to be constant throughout. So now if we have taken 2 ETH outside, we have 8 multiplied by 3750, the constant will be again 30,000. So this is how we ensure the constant remains 30,000 throughout. And this is what happens when you want to trade in such a liquidity pool. And this constant product market maker was the first innovation that came out, and it was first discovered by Banker version V1, and then Uniswap implemented it in version V1 and V2. Since the price of the assets is determined by this formula, what happens is we want to buy token A from the pool. What happens is the supply of token A decreases. And to maintain the constant product, we will add more of token B. And if the supply of token A decreases in the pool, it basically means the price of token A will go up. So the price of the tokens are relative to each other in this case. So this is what constant product market maker is. The next type is the constant sum market maker, CSMM. And as the name suggests, the sum of two tokens need to be constant. So this is the mathematical equation that we have: x plus y equal to k, where x is the amount of token x, y is the amount of token y, and k is the constant. And this constant sum market maker is something which is used when the asset prices are closer. What I mean by that is, let's say you have a liquidity pool of stable coins. Let's say if you have a liquidity pool of derivatives of ETH or Bitcoin, in that case, the constant sum market maker is used. So let's understand constant sum with the help of an example. So in this case, we will take example of a DAI and USDC pool, since both of these tokens are stable coins. So let's say to start with, the pool is having 10 DAI and 3000 USDC. And if we satisfy this equation to start with, we have 10 plus 3000. So the constant is 3010. And now let's say if a user wants to buy 2 DAI in this case, and as you might have guessed, something needs to be traded, right? Because this is a liquidity pool and the constant should remain 3010. So let's do the calculation for that. So what happens in this case is we started with 10 DAI. We are taking out 2 DAI. So what will happen is, as per the formula, 3000 plus dy, which is a delta, and it should be equal to 3010. So what we get is 3008 plus y equal to 3010, and y comes to 2. So basically it means if I want to get 2 DAI, I need to supply 2 USDC. If you see in this case, the y comes to, which means the amount of token that one needs to take out is equal to the amount of tokens that one need to get into the pool. And this is why it's basically being used for cryptocurrencies that have close price correlation. If you see the constant function now, it's 8 plus 3002, which is again 3010. This is basically about constant sum. The third type of AMM is concentrated liquidity market maker. And this is a variation of the constant product market maker. So what I mean by that is it's basically constant product market maker, but then it's being divided in these price ranges that we have. And these price ranges are called ticks. This concentrated liquidity really helps in improving the capital efficiency. And one of the protocol that is using it heavily is Uniswap V3, and it really helps in capital efficiency. What used to happen in earlier versions, V1 and V2, the liquidity was being spread across the whole price curve, as in from 0 to infinity. Whereas in the case of concentrated liquidity, it's being concentrated at a place where the trade will go on. So user is having the option to select which price range they want to choose, and they will get rewarded on the basis of if that range is being used in trading or not. This is really innovative solution that Uniswap came up with, and we will cover concentrated liquidity more in depth when we cover Uniswap. So stay tuned for that. And the fourth category of AMMs that exist is the hybrid AMMs. What I mean by that is all these AMMs that are there, they could be used in combinations. Some of the protocols use like a combination of these, like a combination of a constant product and constant sum. So that's another variation that exists out there. And there's this other type of AMM which is called constant mean AMM, which basically deals with weights as well. So we saw the amount of tokens, right? So the amount of tokens will be related to weights. So instead of like what we saw in constant product market maker, which is like 50-50 ratio, the constant mean the ratio can vary, and it is something that allows more than 2 tokens to be traded in a liquidity pool, and balancer is one of them that uses this constant mean market maker. So now we understand what are the different categories of AMMs. Let's see these categories in terms of graph, because at the end of the day, all of these categories are mathematical functions, mathematical equations. So let's try to visualize them. So if we see for the constant product market maker, we have this graph for x into y equal to 4. And this is how it will look like. It's a parabolic graph. Whatever you see on the x-axis is the amount of token x, and y-axis is the amount of token y. So at any point of time, we can get, so let's say if we want to buy y, so what it means is the amount of token will decrease. What will that result in is the amount of token x getting increased, as this could be depicted from the graph. So this is how it looks like. And the graph for constant sum looks like somewhat this. So the purple line that you see, it's like a straight line that is there. So it's basically for pairs that have like constant price to each other. This we come to an end of the video. I hope you got to learn about AMMs in depth. And if this was useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.